okay, these exact dates are at issue, and these exact dates are. I'm getting signaled here.
Yeah, take it. You want to go off mic for a second?
Now, you remember the affair of Nathan Wade and Fani Willis. Fani Willis, of course, is the district attorney in Fulton County in Georgia, where she, just like her counterpart up in Manhattan, decided to take a novel approach to prosecuting the law and even interpreting the law for that matter, and brought charges of racketeering against Donald Trump, his advisors, and his lawyers with regard to their protests against the way the 2020 election was conducted in Fulton County, Georgia. She decided to prosecute all of them and throw them in jail. And this required a special prosecutor. She used tax dollars out of her budget to pay for a special outside law firm to handle this RICO case. Strangely, she hired a lawyer who has never handled a RICO case in his entire life. Now, you would think that if you were taking money from tax dollars out of the budget to hire a special counsel for something this important and this critical, prosecuting a former president in the middle of an election cycle, then on RICO charges, you would get someone who has even a bare minimum of experience prosecuting RICO cases. But she didn't do that. No, she hired Nathan Wade. And it turns out that she and Nathan Wade were, well, they were lovers. They were doing it. They were shtupping. They were getting it on. They were doing the big nasty. And by the way, they were doing the big nasty. They were shtupping. They were getting it on. They were wah, wah, wah. They were doing that all over the world, globetrotting. They went to Costa Rica. They went out to California. They went everywhere, all the while, doing their thing on the taxpayer dime. This became a huge objection for conflict of interest, as well as corruption and misappropriation of tax dollars. We had the hearing. They were all caught in lies under oath. And the judge walked in and said, yeah, this is bad. So one of you has to go. No, wait, if it's bad. Oh, and he left it up to them to decide. Either Willis has to step down or Wade has to step down. Now, this makes no sense. If this is a conflict of interest and misappropriation of funds, and it's wrong for them to have done this, how can only one of them get punished and the judge not decide which one gets punished? Obviously, that makes no sense. That's why Donald Trump and his fellow defendants are appealing this, and the Georgia State Court of Appeals had decided to hear that appeal, which is a sign that they're probably going to rule in favor of the former president. They're going to hear that appeal in October, which of course means this entire fiasco in Georgia is not going to be resolved before the election. All right, now you remember all of that. I brought you up to speed. Nathan Wade, the prosecutor, the guy who was taking Fani Willis all around the country and doing the big nasty with her, he sat for an interview with Kaitlan Collins on CNN. And at one point in the interview, she asked a very simple question. When did your relationship begin? Watch what happened.
What is your current relationship with the district attorney?
Just as outlined earlier, we are great friends. We speak regularly. The conversation has changed, though, whereas before our conversations were about this case. I'm sure you could imagine and appreciate the amount of time that it takes that, you have to pour into a case, a case of this magnitude, trying to prosecute those defendants. But our conversations have shifted to how are you handling the threats that are coming your way? Are you being safe? Democracy, the case will live on, kind of thing.
Just to clarify, when did the romantic relationship between the two of you start? Yeah,
so we get into. There's been this effort to say that, okay, these exact dates are at issue, and these exact.
All right, now we're going to pause there because this is when things get really interesting and pretty entertaining. But to be clear here, I just want to point out what this question was, because it's the kind of question where an immediate answer should be able to be brought forth. because the question is not an esoteric one. It's not a deeply philosophical one. It's just sort of a fact-based question. When did your relationship begin? And the answer should be, March of 2019 or December of 2023 or what have you. I mean, you're right. So as Kaitlan Collins asked the question,
clarify, when did the romantic relationship between the two of you start?
have any of you been in a relationship, a romantic relationship, a physically romantic relationship, where you don't have some kind of understanding as to when that relationship began? I mean, in other words, not to get too detailed, but after all, I've already said during this segment, when you first have a kiss with somebody that you are romantically involved with. I mean, unless you're a complete and total moral degenerate, okay, which I'm leaving open in this case. Let's face it. He is a lawyer, after all. But unless you're a complete and total moral degenerate, generally speaking, if you have a physical relationship with someone, you probably have a pretty good understanding of when it became physical, right? Like, when did you have your first kiss? When did you get to second base the first time? I'm trying to be as unspecific as possible. When did you do it? When did you, right? You know what I'm saying. When did you? Usually you remember such a thing. So it should be really easy for Nathan Wade to be able to answer it. And yet he immediately begins to obfuscate. So if somebody can't answer a question that for any other normal person, it would be really easy to answer, it tells you that they're not giving you the answer for a very good reason. Now, what that reason might be, we can sort of try to deduce, but let's watch what transpired. Again, here he is attempting to not answer the question with this answer.
Yeah. So, we get into, there's been this effort to say that, okay, these exact dates are at issue, and these exact dates are, I'm getting signaled here.
All right, so now you can see on the chyron there that his media consultant interrupted him mid-answer, and they immediately go over and they unhook him. But they kept rolling, and I want to thank CNN. Listen, I hate CNN, and I really am not a big fan of Kaitlan Collins, but I do love that they kept rolling, and then they showed this. You can see now, here is Nathan Wade with his media consultant, still on set, but just conferring there over the bookcase with, I guess, this has got to be a CNN office because it's got a Ted Turner book there on the shelf. Okay, so they come back over, Kaitlan, sucking in her cheeks there, and then they're ready to go.
Everything okay?
Yeah.
Okay, so now we're all set. Again, I just want to reiterate what the question was. When exactly did your relationship with Fani Willis begin? But which, by the way, here's what makes this even more interesting, what we're about to see. He's already been asked this question under oath in a court of law, right? So the answer should be pretty consistent, unless, of course, you're a lying liar who lies. So she asked the question. He starts to ramble and meander and not give an answer. Then they have to unhook him from the setup. They keep the cameras rolling. He goes over in the corner and confers with his media consultant, who I suppose the media consultant is giving him an answer. Here's what you should say. Here's what you should say about that. And now he's back. So now let's see, after all that time and all of that work and all that effort to get the story straight and make sure that he says the right thing, let's see the brilliant answer to the question, which again, should be super simple. When did your relationship with District Attorney Fani Willis begin? Because he says not, but by the way, he says right now that he's not in that relationship anymore. So he knows that it ended. So things that end, by definition, have to have a beginning, right? All right, here we go.
Just to revisit the question, it was to clarify when the romantic relationship started and when it ended.
Sure. So, I believe that the public has, through the testimony and other interviews, the public has a clear snapshot that this is clearly just a distraction. It is not a relevant issue in this case. And I think that we should be focusing on more of the facts and the indictment in the case.
Well, I ask because obviously it's still a pending matter. It's going to be before the Court of Appeals. And you talked about how proud you were of all the work that you did in this office. And I think the question that people have when they hear from the Court of Appeals, this isn't happening until next spring, is did the relationship jeopardize that work that you did in this investigation?
And therein lies the issue. Why we wouldn't touch upon the work of the Court of Appeals or some higher court, because it's a pending issue before them. I think that we should allow them, take a step back and allow them to take the evidence that they have and do their work, make the decision.
Right. But you did testify to this, and you were asked about on the stand about when it started and when it ended. It just wasn't completely clear, because before it said before the indictment, which was August 15th here in Atlanta. And then later the answer was at the end of that year. And so I think that was the clarity that people were seeking of when it started and when it ended.
Sure. And there again, there's a question before the court. And that is the crux of the question. I don't choose to say or do anything that would jeopardize the case or the court's ruling. I prefer to allow them to make their decision based upon what they have and accept it.
So let me just translate that for you. Kaitlan, I'd love to answer that question, but if I gave you an answer, it would completely and totally screw me over. Because I could tell you the truth, and then everything gets blown up. And we're not able to prosecute Donald Trump, which is really all that matters, because we're trying to interfere in the election. And if I lie to you and I don't tell you the truth, well, then I'm going to be in big trouble with the courts as well, or with public opinion, because I'm sure there's evidence out there that will show exactly when the relationship began. In fact, there's already public testimony that shows when the relationship began, and I'm already kind of screwed with that. So if I give you any kind of answer, I continue to be screwed, so I'm just not going to answer you at all. But it took them that long to get into the corner and confer and come up with that. And I got to say, Kaitlan Collins is being incredibly generous, let's just say, with Mr. Wade here. I would have probably conducted the interview a little bit more aggressively. Kaitlan, get off the Adderall.
Do you believe, as you reflect on this, that your relationship with the district attorney was a mistake?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. What I believe is this whole conversation is a distraction. That's all. It's a tool to stop the train, to slow down the inevitable, which is the trial of the defendants named in the election interference case.
Do you believe the trial ultimately happens?
Absolutely. Absolutely it happens.
Mr. Wade, thank you for your time today.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Job well done, you two. That is great. Congratulations. Oh, gosh, I have so many other questions that I would have loved to have asked. I don't get Nathan Wade to come and sit down with me for an interview. I guess we know why now. I wouldn't be so friendly. Do you think it was a mistake? Absolutely not. No, really, because you're a complete and total punchline across the nation right now. And because of the relationship, you've single-handedly completely spiked this and, by the way, helped Donald Trump prove his point. So I'm just curious. We know that Donald Trump's approval with Black voters in America, it continues to rise, especially Black men. Is that a MAGA tie you're wearing? Because honestly, I think you're on Trump's side the way this is all going down. You have given him the biggest gift anybody could possibly have given him in this entire prosecution of Fulton County. That's something to behold. And the fact that they had to stop everything, unplug, disengage, go over the corner, confer. Kaitlan Collins sitting there sort of, what do we do? And comes back and says, yeah, this whole question as to whether when the relationship began, that's just a distraction. You know, when people say this is a distraction, they are actually trying to distract you. You see, this isn't a distraction. This is the crux of the argument and the appeal right now, that in fact, these two, Mr. Wade and Ms. Willis, have conducted gross violations of legal ethics. against the defendant here. And last I checked, our system of justice in this country is actually supposed to protect the rights of the accused from a corrupt and unethical, powerful government prosecutor using the law to punish the accused. And may I just say, even if the accused is guilty. Now, I don't believe Donald Trump is guilty of anything that they're saying he's guilty of in Fulton County. But understand this critically important element of the American judicial system, the American criminal justice system. You could have arrested a murderer with literal blood on his hands and a literal smoking gun in his hand and have a completely verified video of that murderer murdering his victim without any shadow of a doubt. But if in the course of prosecuting that murderer caught red-handed with a smoking gun, the government, through its prosecutors, conduct themselves in an illegal, unethical, and immoral way, then you have to throw out the prosecution. Because we set up a system that bends over backwards to protect the accused. And for Democrats in 2024, when the accused name is Donald J. Trump, all of that gets pushed through the shredder because none of that matters. The only thing that matters is doing whatever they can to defeat that man and keep you from being able to vote for him. But see, this is why I don't get Nathan Wade for an interview. Sorry.